Hi, it's Dr. Spates giving you the final piece of the SPSS homework assignment. We're focusing on number 4, which looks at the ANOVA and the regression. I'm going to start this out here by looking at our ANOVA section, where we're going to be focusing on research question 1. And it states, is there a difference between Greek organizations in their level of involvement? Now, using your cheat sheet and also looking at the keywords, you can find out the answers to the first couple of questions. So notice that once again, we're asking about difference. We're saying that there will be a difference, and so that's our keyword there to go into our cheat sheet, and notice that we are going to be comparing groups. And so there we're looking at Greek organizations this time and their level of involvement. So what becomes the independent variable? That's going to be Greek types of organizations. Now some of you may be wondering, well, what makes it a ANOVA instead of a t-test? Didn't we do a comparison the other week using a t-test and we had the Greek? Well, remember there are 3 groups to the types of Greek section. So it's not just 2, there were 3. So that points us in the direction this time of an ANOVA, which stands for analysis of variance. ANOVA stands for analysis of variance. And so we're looking for that those differences between groups among the 3 categories and not just 2. The second question says, what is the dependent variable? And so in this case, that's going to be involvement, as this is the variable that will change depending on what category we are looking at. And then for part C, what is the appropriate test to investigate this research question? That would be a one-way ANOVA. If you are looking in your crop book, you should see that that is the correct answer. So now it's time to run the test and get our numbers. So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, we're here in SPSS and we're ready to run our test. We're going to start out by going to our common button here, which is Analyze. And we're going to go down to Compare Means, the same as we did for the t-test, but this time we're going to choose one-way ANOVA. And in this case, we're going to choose our correct variables here. So again, we're going to look at our first factor, which is the type of Greek. And then we'll go down here to our involvement total. Choose that one. We don't need to choose any other test or options at this time. Everything that we've chosen is correct. And as you see, the OK button has appeared, so that means we can run the test successfully. And here is our ANOVA table. As you can see, we have our degrees of freedom, our number here showing within groups. We have our F statistic, which is used for ANOVAs, and we have our level of significance. And so if we come back over and begin to write our results, we can see that using the one-way ANOVA, our F statistic, we have our degrees of freedom, and we also have our remaining number here, the N, our population number, which was 0.053. That's our F statistic. Okay, going back here, that's our F statistic. And the P, or the significance level, was 0.949, which means that there is not significance because the P in this case is greater than our standard, which is 0.05. So our next, for the part E, our last question, which is asking us what is the decision, that there is not a significant difference between Greek organizations. And we know that it is not significant because P was greater than 0.05. So the differences that are shown, the statistics that are revealed, are not significant. That completes the section for the ANOVA section. And since many of you won't be using that style, we only did one. However, we finish off this assignment by looking at regression. We have 2 of those. Let's look at the first one. So number 2 begins our regression section, and Hypothesis 1 states that anxiety will have a significant impact on level of involvement. And so what is the independent variable in this case? Anxiety. But what is the dependent variable? That's going to be involvement, because involvement will be affected by, or we're predicting that it will be impacted by anxiety. Now notice again, if we break down the hypothesis, the word impact is used. And if you go to your cheat sheet, you will see that that word becomes a trigger word for regressions. If we want to know impact, influence, predictor of, all of those are keywords for the regression. So that becomes our answer for C. What is the appropriate test to investigate this hypothesis? The linear regression, the simple linear regression it's also known as. And so now we need to go and run our test in SPSS. So here we are in our SPSS output here. I'm just going to close out our last window. And we'll start as we always do, beginning with analyze. And then we're going to come down to regression and choose linear. And now we need to plug in the correct variables into the correct places. Notice there's an independent space and a dependent space. So based on our hypothesis, we know that anxiety is the independent variable. So we'll go over here to total, plug it in. And then we will go to involvement and plug it into dependent. Similar to the ANOVA, we've chosen everything that we want, so there's nothing else that we really need to choose. And we are ready because the OK button has revealed itself, and so we can run the test successfully. Click OK. Now with a regression, you get several tables here, as you can see, and that's the difference here. And so I'm going to point out two important tables that we need to look at. That's the model summary table and the ANOVA table. Notice that although we're not running an ANOVA, we received an ANOVA table, and that's how regressions are used. So there's two things that we want to look at. As we write here, we're going to first look at the value of the R squared, which can be found in the model summary. And that's here, 0.077. And then we'll come down and use our degrees of freedom and the 73, which is our N, 75, minus number of predictor variables, minus 1. Okay, that's how we get 73. And then we go to our F statistic over here, as well as our significance level here. So when we write those results, we're showing that our R squared was a 0.077 with our degrees of freedom along with our N, and the value of the F statistic showing that it was 6.06, and P is less than 0.05, meaning that these results are significant. And if we use the R squared value, it'll show us that if we explain the variable, so if we're explaining involvement using anxiety, then we can say that anxiety has a 7.7% explained variance of involvement, meaning that there may be some other significant factors. It's a small percentage, but it does support our hypothesis because it's significant. That is our first regression. Now we're going to do this again with another hypothesis, and this brings us to question 3. Question 3 gives us our second hypothesis, which states educational satisfaction will have a significant influence on anxiety. And so when we're using this one, again, influence becomes that keyword to our cheat sheet, pointing us in the direction of a regression once again. Our independent variable being educational satisfaction, because we're predicting that it will have the influence, or it will be the influencing variable, and anxiety being our change variable that will be impacted by educational satisfaction. And so the appropriate test is a linear regression, and we can go ahead and run our testing. So we're going to start once again. Well, first I'm going to get rid of the output. And we can go ahead and begin. We're going to go down to regression, again to linear. And let's hit reset. And now we're going to run these variables. Once again, we're going to look at educational satisfaction, and we're going to look at anxiety. Okay, we're ready to run. There's nothing else to choose. Let's hit OK. And again, we have our two main tables that we're going to look at, the model summary and the ANOVA table. We have our R-squared value of 0.021, our degrees of freedom, our N, our F statistic, and our significance statistic. So let's look at the results. We have an R-squared value of 0.021. Our F with degrees of freedom and our N equals 1.54. However, in this case, P is greater than 0.05. So that points us in the direction of knowing that these results, although they show an impact or an influence, that the results are not significant, okay, because it is greater than 0.05. So if we were to explain it, we would say that educational satisfaction has a 2.1% explained variance on anxiety. However, that 2.1% is not significant, so it fails to support our hypothesis in this case because our significance level is greater than 0.05. And those are the answers for the final part of this SPSS homework series on completing the regression and the ANOVA. I hope that you have learned over these last few weeks each of these different types of testing, and I hope you return to these videos to use them in the future as you complete your final paper. Have a great week.